speaker represents this radical left-wing tradition. He's from the trade Unionists for Independence, and I'd like you to welcome Jim McFarlane.
Thanks very much, Billy, and thanks to the organisers actually for getting this meeting together at fairly short notice. And I think, I'm starting off my comments, to fellow United fans. First of all, to say that I'm not a nationalist. I'm not a Scottish or a British nationalist. I'm a trade unionist and I'm a socialist, and I'm in favour of independence for Scotland. And I think it's important to say that this movement and this referendum isn't just about Scotland as of its own. My reasons for supporting independence are nothing to do with changing the flag over Edinburgh Castle from the Saltaire to the Saltaire from the Union Jack or any other public buildings. My motivation, my whole plan and taking part in this is what type of Scotland do we want to live in the 21st century? Because it's important to put this in that context. The context that we currently have politically and economically, the context of economic austerity. Economic austerity which has been foisted upon the working class of this country on the behalf of the City of London and the bankers and their pals in Edinburgh as well. Because let's be clear about this, their economic crisis that's begun a few years ago, costing billions of pounds, started by the bankers in the City of London, and who's been asked to pay the price of that? We are. Ordinary working class people have been asked to pay the economic price for an economic crisis that they have no part in creating. Absolutely no part in that. And I think it's important then that we debate the issues of independence for Scotland. It's about what type of independence. I think it's important to say that the issues of poverty and inequality, of workers' rights and the ideas of public services are to the fore for me. And I think who's going to be decisive in this election? I think Billy's absolutely right. Who will decide the outcome of this election? It'll be the votes of working class Scots across this country. They'll be the people who decide whether that we win this referendum or not. And I think it's then about this context. There was a recent report from some of the charities and voluntary sector called Scotland's Outlook, a recent report which clearly says, it puts this, I think some of the detail of this are very, very important. It revealed that 870,000 people in Scotland are living in poverty. Let's remember at the same time, the 5 richest families in Scotland have the same wealth as the poorest 20% of people in Scotland. I think that's a scandal in the 21st century that we still live in that side of things. The impact of the savage welfare tax and the fall in living standards means that 20% of children in Scotland living in poverty. Again, I think it's a disgrace. There is absolutely no excuse for that. There is absolutely nothing natural about that. That's an absolute product of capitalism, in my opinion, and it's a byproduct of asking the poor to pay the price for the rich. The expansion of food banks. 5 years ago there was one food bank in Scotland run by the Trussell Trust. Now they're saying there'll be 61 in Scotland. Again, it's a disgrace. It's a disgrace that people are having to rely on food banks. And let's also nail the Daily Mail lie. This isn't about just the so-called undeserving poor, the lazy, the work shy and all the rest of it. The number of people who rely on food banks are people in work, people who didn't get paid enough and who are living on benefits to top up their meagre pay and all the rest of it. So it's not good enough that in this day and age people are living in that type of society. Let's also remember what's still to come, because Gideon Osborne's austerity budget cuts are only still at the beginning. They're still talking about a further £6 billion to be cut from the benefits and welfare bill in Scotland over the next 2 years by the Tory Lib Dem coalition. We've had the scandal of the bedroom tax, a campaign that I sort of and my union branch have been heavily involved in locally. Let's remember what the bedroom tax was. It was an attack on the poorest in society. It was an attack on social and council housing, gains that the working class people in the past had to fight for. And this was imposed on chancellors, on those people who claimed that the poorest people had a spare bedroom or two. Let's remember, this came from chancellors who didn't have a spare bedroom or two, they had a spare mansion or two. A government made up of multi-millionaires, again, attacking the poor and the poorest in society. But where they failed is they tried to divide us. They divide the poor, the poorest, those on benefits and those out of work against those of us who were in work, and they have failed. They have failed, and we welcome the gains that have been made by the Scottish Government. But I would say to Shona and others is we need to move faster than that. A promise was made in the Scottish Parliament back in February, and I went to speak to Dundee City Council during the week there, who are still claiming they're waiting on that money to mitigate the bedroom tax. So we need to keep the pressure up on that issue. But let's remember also who these people were that took those decisions. They were the same people who were caught with their noses in the troughs over their expenses scandals and all the rest of it. If that had happened to a working class person who was working on the side well on benefits, they would have been jailed. Yet the Maria Millers of the world got away with pocketing £90,000 of the public purse and getting away with paying back £4,500. That's an absolute scandal. And that's the type of thing that I want this independence referendum debate to be about. It's about political principles. It's about what type of Scotland do we want to live in and to move away from that. Because I'm sick of being told as a public sector worker, I'm a local government worker in the council, I work in the social work department, I'm an admin worker. I'm sick of being told that we have to accept cuts. I'm sick of being told that there's no money for public services, there's no money for pensions, there's no money for schools or hospitals. Yet they can find £100 billion to replace Trident. So let's not be taken in by the idea that there's no money. There's plenty of money out there. It's about who controls it and whose interests that need to change on that basis. And I'm really interested here today actually hear your views. So I'm not going to speak for a long time. I'm just going to finish on this wee point. It's about real change. For me, voting yes in this referendum is about real change. And at this point I would make is, real change doesn't just happen voting every now and again. Voting every few years for your council or your MP or your MSP or even in referendums. Real change comes about when ordinary people like yourselves get involved in campaigns and fight back against that. We defeated the poll tax. It wasn't because councillors or MPs campaigned against it. It was because the non-payment campaign brought down Thatcher and defeated Thatcher. Real change didn't come about when we gained the rights to vote or the trade union rights or the right to sick pay or holiday pay because the ruling class deemed to give it to us because they didn't. We had to fight for it. We had to fight for it and we need to fight to defend that again. And all I would say to you, everybody that's in favour of independence, whether you're in favour of independence or not, because there might be some people here who aren't, as that struggle and that campaign starts now, this isn't just about voting in September and hoping and leaving it to the experts or the politicians, however well motivated some of them are, and I'm not doubting that, because let's remember, a lot of these people go into politics claiming they want to change the world, and all they do is change their car, their bank balance and their house. And it's about time we had a political representation that represented ordinary working class people. I'm in favour of a new workers' party that stands up for ordinary working people, because in my opinion we don't have one at this stage. That doesn't mean to say that we can't work with other people and other parties in favour of independence, but maybe we can have differences on what that actually means and how that comes about. But this is an opportunity, this is a chance that doesn't come around very often to decide that. And I think we should grasp that opportunity. We should have confidence in our ideas about the type of Scotland that we want to have and what powers the Parliament has, but not just what powers it has, and whose interests are these powers administered and whose interests are these powers being used for. Because I don't just want to change the flag, I want to change the whole economic system itself, and I think this is beginning for that. Thanks very much.